Hey, it's fucking distracting having somebody walking up behind Bryce in the middle of the fucking scene. Give me a fucking answer. What don't you get about it?
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to MetrObelisk Radio. Today we are looking at Terminator Salvation. Now this movie is rather unique for the Terminator series given the fact that there's no time travel in this movie whatsoever. It all takes place during the future war between man and machines. So does this automatically make the movie bad? Is it too different from the other movies to even work? Or is this movie some underrated gem as a result of being too different? Now, before we get started, remember to follow the blog, MetrObeliskRadio.blogspot.com, where you can stay up to date on all MetrObelisk Radio uploads, no matter if they're exclusive to the platform that you are currently watching or listening to this on. Now, with that out of the way, let's take a look at Terminator Salvation.
Oh, good for you. And how was it?
Now, as always, we start off by looking at the creative team for the movies, and this movie was directed by McG. Now, he started out like a lot of other movie directors in the fact that he started in music videos. He directed the music videos for Korn's Get a Life, Smash Mouth's Walking on the Sun and All-Star, and Bare Naked Ladies' 1 Week. Now, the movies that he's directed include Charlie's Angels with Drew Barrymore, Cameron Diaz, and Lucy Liu, along with its sequel, Charlie's Angels Full Throttle, We Are Marshall with Matthew McConaughey, and This Means War with Chris Pine and Reese Witherspoon. Now, the two writers on this movie wrote Terminator 3. That would be John Brancato and Michael Ferris. I do apologize if I'm butchering their names. I have only read the names. I have not heard them pronounced ever. And yes, they returned to also write this movie. Now, just in case if you missed the previous Terminator episode, they were two of the writers for Terminator 3, as I stated. Their other writing credits include Into the Sun with Anthony Michael Hall, The Net with Sandra Bullock, The Game with Michael Douglas, Catwoman with Halle Berry, Surrogates with Bruce Willis, and The Hunter's Prayer with Sam Worthington. Now we're going to move on to the character analysis portion of our retrospective, and we're going to start off with the man himself, Christian Bale as John Connor. It's fucking distracting! Now, this is now the third actor to portray John Connor, and all I have to really say is that this version of John Connor is grittier than the others, and that has a lot to do with the fact that now he's fighting in the war versus being a preteen in Terminator 2 and a guy living off the grid in Terminator 3. And let's be honest, Christian Bale should have won a fucking Academy Award for that Terminator tape with how he was able to just go off the cuff on the guy for like 4 minutes straight. That to me was fucking funny, and you knew I couldn't resist opening with just a little teeny bit of the tape. Now, next up, we do have Sam Worthington as Marcus Wright. Now, what the movie did with this character was amazing. He's a guy on death row in 2003, but he turns over his body to science. It turns out later that he signed his body over to Cyberdyne, and they used his body to build the perfect infiltration unit. Essentially a Terminator who believes that he's still human, genuinely believes he's still human. The problem with this revelation in the movie, however, is that it was spoiled in the trailer. Yes, people knew that he was the Terminator in the movie before the movie even came out. They showed the scene where he's chained up and you see the endoskeleton. But other than that, the character was really well designed. He would be the guy who would also save John Connor at the end of this movie as well. Then we have Moon Bloodgood as Blair. Now, she's the fighter pilot who gets shot down. Marcus saves her, and so she brings him back to the base where John Connor is. Now, once it's revealed that Marcus is a Terminator, she breaks him out of the Resistance grasp. Next up, we have Anton Yelchin as Kyle Reese. Yes, Chekhov himself, and a very young Kyle Reese in this movie. He's a young Resistance fighter based in LA fighting against the machines alone with some other girl that doesn't say one word. I don't even remember her name off the top of my head. Now, he ultimately gets captured and is brought to Skynet Central in San Francisco to essentially be killed. That way, if you've been following along with the Terminator, Kyle Reese is John Connor's daddy. Next up, we have Bryce Dallas Howard as Kate Connor. Now, assuming this is the same, like, Kate Brewster from Terminator 3, just played by a different actor. Now, in this movie, they don't show her enough. Now, maybe if this movie got a sequel, she would have started to play a much bigger role in Salvation 2 and Salvation 3, but obviously we never got any more after this one movie. And finally, I gotta bring this guy up just because the actor, Michael fucking Ironside as General Ashdown. It's Michael fucking Ironside. It's Sam Fisher. It's Jester from Top Gun, arguably the best part of Top Gun. In this movie, he's actually the leader of the Resistance, and this movie opens with the text that says that some humans believe that John Connor is a false prophet. Now, once Ashdown is killed, it's assumed that John Connor retained his control that he took from Ashdown earlier on. Now let's take a look at this movie narratively. Now, this movie narratively is vastly different from the prior Terminator movies. For starters, there isn't a Terminator who's sent back in time to try to kill John Connor or his lieutenants. Instead, this focuses on the war between man and machines, as I said in the intro, and this movie takes place 15 years after Terminator 3 in the magical year of 2018, a year that's already come and gone by the time that this is published. Now, this movie, plot-wise, has a two-pronged approach. The first major plot is focusing on the Resistance obtaining a signal that would render the Terminators utterly useless, but the downside is the signal has to be constantly running. Now, the second major plot is focusing on Marcus Wright. He escapes from the Resistance after they had left, after obtaining the signal from a place that he was hanging out. It's never really explained, they just show up. He then wants to head north into San Francisco to Skynet Central, and along the way he finds Kyle Reese before he's captured and taken to Skynet Central directly. Now, the two plots converge when Marcus and Blair are making their way back to the Resistance base, and it turns out that Marcus is a Terminator, and I already brought this up in the character analysis portion of this. Now, in the end, Marcus promises John Connor that he can get him into Skynet to save Kyle Reese and basically blow it all to hell. And I have to bring this up because I brought this up in Terminator 2 and Terminator 3 episodes. The 12 Monkeys logic with time travel. In this movie, we see that it was John Connor who made his mother, Sarah Connor, a target for Skynet to go after. Marcus was transmitting back to Skynet when he said something to the effect of, "You tried to kill my mother, Sarah Connor, and my father, Kyle Reese," to Marcus when he was chained up. Now, we know how the events of the first movie actually happened. It also makes sense that Skynet would have no idea what Sarah Connor even looked like. All they would have is just a name and a city. And to even continue off of Terminator 3, we learned that Skynet was bought by the United States Air Force. Now, I know that this is a small thing, a small little detail, but this confirms that Judgment Day couldn't have been prevented. Now, personally, I figured with the technology that Cyberdyne was developing, the US government would be quite interested to buy a piece of that and continue it in case if Cyberdyne would blown all to hell. Now, again, Skynet changed forms from a bunch of supercomputers linked to a central source via a super microprocessing chip from the future to a piece of software that, if delivered out to enough computers in the world, it can become decentralized and be its own thing. Now let's take a look at how this movie was received. This movie has a Rotten Tomatoes score of 33% based on 279 critic reviews, with the critics' consensus being, quote, "With storytelling as robotic as the film's iconic villains, Terminator Salvation offers plenty of great effects but lacks the heart of the original films." And the movie has an audience score of 54% based on 885,036 audience reviews. This movie has a Metacritic score of 49 based on 46 critic reviews and a user score of 5.9 out of 10 based on 772 ratings. And this movie sits on IMDb at 6.5 out of 10 based on 339,206 reviews. Now, this movie was made on a budget of $200 million, just like Terminator 3. Now, adjusted for inflation in 2020 dollars, that is a budget of $241,544,348.99 and grossed worldwide $371,353,001. Now, adjusted for inflation in 2020 dollars, that is a worldwide gross of $448,491,094.37. And again, with the $200 million budget, it didn't work with Terminator 3, but they're going to throw the same amount of money at another movie and just hope and pray to God that it works. You know how Albert Einstein defined insanity, right? It's doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting a different result each time. Now, what you're going to see by this movie is this is the point where the main three behind the first two movies started turning on the series. James Cameron considered that this is an interesting film and that he, quote, "didn't hate as much as I thought I was going to," and even went as far as to praise Sam Worthington's performance. Now, this is where Jim Cameron said that he would never return to the franchise. Quote, "The series has kind of run its course. Frankly, the soup's already been pissed in by other filmmakers." End quote. Now, Arnold Schwarzenegger initially said that this was, quote, "a great film. I was very excited," then later reversed his position when he said, quote, "awful. It tried hard. Not that they didn't try. The acting and everything, it missed the boat." Linda Hamilton, who played Sarah Connor, expressed her opinion on the series. Quote, "The series was perfect with 2 films. It was a complete circle, and it was enough in itself. But there will always be those who will try to milk the cow." End quote. Now, ironically enough, all 3 of these people would return to the franchise once again. Arnold returned for Terminator Genisys and Dark Fate. Hamilton and Cameron both returned for Terminator Dark Fate. I guess all 3 of these people softened their position on the series over the years, or quite frankly, the money was simply just too good to pass up. This movie was a lot grittier than the first 3 movies, but it had to be. This goes back to the idea of Terminator 2 changing genres. So did this. This movie is a war movie in the style of others such as The Green Zone with Matt Damon and Black Hawk Down. If you're going to change the premise and not send anybody back in time to kill John Connor or even protect him, then the genre and style need to change to go along with it. And I'll end the episode off with this. Most people don't know this, but this movie was supposed to kickstart a trilogy. And I genuinely believe that this was the right step forward for the Terminator franchise. You can only make the same movie so many times before it gets stale. You can't just continue to send a Terminator back in time to try and kill John Connor. That's now ended with Terminator 3. So how do you move forward? Well, focus on the future war between man and machine. We know that the events of Terminator 2 and Terminator 3 alter the future war between man and machine, so writers don't have to stick with what James Cameron had in mind for that. This could have become a multimedia franchise that started with this movie, then gone into the video games, comic books, novels, TV shows, etc. The TV show that was made alongside this movie is set after Terminator 2, but before the events of Terminator 3. The multimedia franchise didn't happen simply just due to unrealistic expectations. Terminator 3 was a $200 million movie that didn't even make its budget back, and if it did, it barely made its budget back. This movie was a $200 million movie that made less than Terminator 3. The unrealistic expectation by the people behind the franchise after Terminator 2 was that this was going to be a billion-dollar franchise. And in my opinion, that was never in the cards at the time when this movie came out, simply because a lot of people felt like this movie isn't a Terminator movie because it didn't involve James Cameron.